It started the way most stories of ambition do, quietly and without fanfare. I was just another face in the office crowd, moving from desk to desk, answering emails, finishing reports, and slipping out at the end of the day before the sun went down. There was no sign that anything remarkable was coming, no signal in the ordinary hum of the office machines or the shuffle of papers. But somewhere in the back of my mind, I wanted more. I wanted to climb out of the predictable rhythm of my position, to break into the next level, the one where doors didn't close on me but opened instead. The problem was simple. People rarely got promoted just for doing their jobs well. I had learned that early. Effort alone wasn't currency. Visibility was. Recognition. The bosses needed to see you not as a cog in the wheel, but as the one who kept it spinning. And if you could do that, then you stood a chance. I began watching how others moved in the office, those who somehow managed to rise faster than the rest. It wasn't luck, not entirely. There was a pattern, subtle but real. They weren't necessarily the smartest or the hardest working, but they were always in the right place at the right time, always in conversations that mattered, always managing to look indispensable. So I decided to use what I later thought of as the classic cheat. Not a trick in the dishonest sense, but a way of bending the usual rules without breaking them. I started by volunteering for small, extra tasks that no one wanted, the ones that seemed thankless. Late reports, early morning prep, tedious client follow-ups. They were the jobs that stayed invisible until they went wrong, and I made sure they didn't. Slowly, people began to rely on me, not for my title but for the fact that I could be trusted to handle the things that slipped through the cracks. Then came the second part of the cheat, making sure my work was seen. I stopped handing in reports by email only. Instead, I printed them and placed them directly on the manager's desk, timing it so they would catch me dropping it off. I phrased updates in ways that emphasized solutions, not problems. This has been handled, instead of this was an issue. I made my contributions visible without announcing them loudly, the way some people do, but with the kind of quiet assurance that sticks in someone's mind when they're making decisions later. The real test came when the department was hit with an unexpected crisis. A client had an urgent issue, the kind that could sour a relationship overnight. I wasn't the most senior person, not even close, but I had been following the project closely enough to know its details inside out. When the panic spread, I stepped in. Calmly, I gathered the relevant files, called the right people, and coordinated a response. No one had asked me to, but by the time my manager arrived, the fire was half extinguished. He looked at me in a way he hadn't before, like I was someone who could be counted on in the moments that mattered most. That moment was when the cheat paid off. All the small, deliberate choices, the extra tasks, the visible contributions, the timing of my presence, had built up to this. The promotion didn't come overnight, but when the position above me opened a few months later, my name was the one that floated to the top of the list. Not because I had been the loudest or the most brilliant, but because I had made myself visible in the right ways, dependable in the quiet ways, and present when the stakes were highest. Looking back, I realized it wasn't really cheating at all, at least not in the dishonest sense. It was the cheat of perspective, the shortcut of knowing the unwritten rules of office life. Many people wait for recognition to come to them, thinking good work will speak for itself. The truth is, it rarely does. You have to frame it, place it where others can see it, and prove yourself in the gaps where no one else wants to stand. That was the classic cheat, to be noticed not for noise, but for presence, reliability, and timing. And when the promotion letter finally came, sealed and official, it felt less like luck and more like the inevitable result of a quiet game I had been playing all along. The promotion didn't change my title overnight, but it changed the way the room looked at me. Suddenly, people who once passed me in the hallway without a glance started greeting me, asking my opinion on things they used to decide alone. The shift was subtle, but undeniable. Still, the journey to that point hadn't been as smooth as the story might make it sound. There were days when I doubted myself, when it seemed like no one noticed the extra hours, the invisible effort, the quiet patience I put in while others took the spotlight. There was one afternoon, I remember clearly. I had stayed late the night before, compiling a report that needed to be delivered at the morning meeting. I walked in with a file under my arm, ready to hand it directly to my manager. Before I could, someone else, one of those colleagues who always managed to speak louder, smile brighter, snatched the moment. He began presenting a summary I had written as though he had pulled it together himself. My stomach twisted. For a moment, I felt the kind of anger that makes you want to stand up and shout the truth. But I didn't. I let him speak. I let the room believe it. Later that day, I slipped quietly into the manager's office and placed the original file on his desk. My name was on every page. I didn't accuse anyone or complain. I simply said, "Here's the full version in case you want more detail." His eyes flicked over my name, and he nodded slowly, as if he already knew the truth. That was the moment I learned another part of the cheat: patience. Not every win needs to be fought for in the open. Some victories come from letting the evidence speak for you. But patience didn't mean passivity. I began to build relationships beyond my own desk, weaving threads that tied me to different parts of the office. I asked questions of people in departments most ignored. I offered help in places where no one expected me to. By the time the annual review cycle came around, I had quietly built a network of allies who could vouch for me without me ever having to ask. It wasn't manipulation. It was simply remembering that in the workplace, success isn't built in isolation. There were nights, though, when I went home exhausted, asking myself if it was worth it. Was I simply working harder than everyone else for scraps of recognition? Was I fooling myself into believing a promotion would solve something deeper, some quiet restlessness inside me? The thought lingered, but every time doubt pulled me back, something happened that pushed me forward again. A thank you from a client, a nod of approval from my manager, a colleague who leaned on me when things got tough. The real turning point came during a quarterly strategy meeting. It was one of those intimidating sessions with the upper executives, the kind where most of us stayed quiet and less spoken to. I had prepared notes, though no one had asked me to. When a sudden question came up about client retention strategies, something our department had been struggling with, there was silence in the room. People shifted in their seats, unsure of what to say. I felt my pulse quicken, my heart thumping in my chest. Then I spoke. I didn't make a speech, just a few clear, confident sentences outlining an approach we had already been experimenting with quietly, the results we had seen, and how it could be expanded. The room turned to me. The executives nodded. My manager leaned back in his chair, half smiling as though he had been waiting for this moment. That was when I realized the classic cheat wasn't about sneaking or tricking. It was about being ready before anyone else thought to be. The work I had done in the shadows had prepared me for the spotlight when it appeared. When the promotion finally came, it wasn't just a title or a pay raise. It was validation. It was proof that the small, consistent choices had mattered, that patience had paid off, that visibility had been just as important as skill. It didn't mean the struggle ended. Every step up the ladder brings new challenges. But it meant I had cracked a code many never figure out. And if there was one lesson etched into me from the whole journey, it was this: career success is rarely about being the loudest in the room. It's about being the one who quietly builds enough trust, enough presence, and enough readiness that when the moment arrives, no one can imagine moving forward without you. The first days after the promotion felt unreal. I remember walking into the office and sensing the difference immediately, though nothing had physically changed. The desk was the same. The walls were the same dull color. The hum of printers and chatter still filled the air. But people looked at me differently. They paused when I spoke. They waited for my approval before moving ahead with a decision. It was flattering at first, intoxicating even, but it didn't take long before the weight of it settled in. The truth about promotions, something no one tells you, is that they don't only elevate your status, they magnify your flaws. Suddenly, the safety of invisibility was gone. Every idea I shared was taken seriously, but also judged more sharply. Every mistake mattered more. I realized quickly that the same patience and quiet persistence that had carried me upward wouldn't be enough now. Leadership required something else: the courage to step into discomfort, to risk being wrong in front of others, and to carry responsibility that wasn't mine alone anymore. At first, I struggled with this shift. There were moments when I caught myself wanting to slip back into the old habit of doing the invisible work in silence, letting others speak while I stayed in the background. But now people waited on me, expected me to speak first, to set the tone. That transition was uncomfortable. The same colleagues who had once been rivals now reported to me, and managing that dynamic without arrogance was its own challenge. I could sense resentment in the air from some corners, people who thought I had been lucky, or political, or simply in the right place at the right time. The old me might have tried to win everyone over quietly, but I knew better now. I leaned into transparency. When I didn't know something, I admitted it. When I made a decision, I explained my reasoning, even if it wasn't perfect. I tried to make my team feel that the promotion wasn't just mine, but ours, that their work, their cooperation, and their trust had lifted all of us. Slowly, some of the tension eased. There was one night, late, when I stayed behind long after the others had gone. I sat at my desk looking at the city lights flickering outside the office window, remembering what it had felt like to be invisible here, to be just another employee hoping for recognition. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had spent so much energy trying to be seen, and now that I finally was, part of me missed the safety of the shadows. But then I thought of the crisis I had helped manage, the strategy meeting where I had spoken up, the quiet hours I had invested when no one was watching. I realized those moments had prepared me for this exact position, whether or not I felt ready. The classic cheat that had brought me here, visibility, reliability, presence, was still valuable, but in this new role, it had to evolve. It wasn't just about being seen anymore. It was about helping others be seen. I began making a point to highlight my team's contributions in front of higher-ups, to give credit where it was often overlooked. I recognized in them the same hunger I had once felt, that quiet desire for recognition, and I knew how much it mattered. In the months that followed, something unexpected happened. The same strategy that had once propelled me upward now started lifting others. My team grew more confident, more willing to take risks, more open about their ideas. The office began to feel less like a battlefield of competition and more like a place where collaboration had real weight. And as they grew, so did I. Looking back now, the promotion wasn't the peak I once thought it would be. It was just another beginning. Success wasn't a single climb up the ladder. It was a cycle of growth, of learning to adapt, of shifting the spotlight from yourself to those around you. The real cheat, I learned, wasn't about playing the system for personal gain. It was about understanding the unspoken rules, using them wisely, and then rewriting them in a way that lifted more than just yourself. And that, in the end, was the biggest win of all.